So it's Juneteenth, and there's it might be the best example, I think, in human history of a second class citizenship being imposed on people who technically were free. That is the example that we have in Black Americans after the Emancipation Proclamation. And I always try to put it into perspective and try to explain that the last out group, it will be poor people. And if you look at how black folks were typified by the minstrel shows, those stereotypes are specifically attributable to poor people. They stuck that on black people. That black people are lazy is an excuse for why they don't have anything, but me and my German descended white families who were up here already set up by the time there's industry, there's mass production, there's factory work, there's coal mines, there's a steel mill, there's steel. I don't know, I keep a lot of stuff in Pennsylvania. I guess that's where I would try to go. Anyway, some black folks just stayed on the plantations and worked for very little a lot of times. Others took their chance, made their way into the city. They get typified as lazy. That's why they don't have anything. But that's just my people wanting to give themselves credit for all that they have. And it's truly a privileged position. If I leave the country at that time, or if I leave the United States, even today, Iraqis, they're so lazy. Well, they don't have a factory to go to or something, so what do when you're not at the factory? A lot of you are pretty lazy. The last outgroup's just going to be poor people. We typify black folks as lazy for being poor, starting poor, criminal for starting poor, when it's the same. This is why we need an amnesty package. We need to bring all those undocumented people into the sunlight and steal them away from the cartel and all this under the table stuff. It was the same for black folks. If you can't come into my workplace and really get a fair shot because I've got an idea from the minstrel shows and white guys in blackface speaking all the ways that I can mock or criticize or talk about the black guy at work, he steals my stuff, he doesn't feel like doing anything, he's lazy. This is all bullshit, and it's all based on our idea of poor people. And it got stuck on black people. Another stereotype from those minstrel shows, besides being lazy or criminal is just a stereotype that is persisted. But I mean, just like I said, if your cousin Jorge has something going on and you can't come into my workplace because I'm telling people you steal and you're not in tight with them like that, you're hanging on to your livelihood. And as one who doesn't feel I'm not loving the workplace. I think maybe God has a different plan for me. We'll find it. That keeps you hanging on to your livelihood so you can keep some dignity and earn some money for yourself. If that's how me and my white folks are talking about the black guy at work, I'm making sure my window's not open and people are like, that white guys talk about black people. I mean, we're that sensitive and touchy about stuff. So I really love our differences. I love our diversity. They talk about tolerating each other, but we should really celebrate that this person's from something completely different. I like that. And one more stereotype often seen in the minstrel shows, because I think it's kind of charismatic or charming, is that happy-go-lucky. I looked up, they had a nice list of how, just on Wikipedia, if you just look up minstrel shows, they had a simple, basic collection of stereotypes in the way that black folks were depicted. in these minstrel shows with these guys in blackface. Like, aren't they always white guys too? So the happy-go-lucky, I've had to be that guy because I've been that odd one out. That is simply a poor person who doesn't want to lose their job, and they're going to go, oh, yes, sir, I'll get that right away. You know? I'm not trying to do impressions, but you know that stereotype? I've been that guy. I'm trying to get along. I can't afford to have a problem. So those stereotypes, they really just typify people who need to adjust to you in the environment because you are privileged enough to think that you can just make others adjust to you. I've had to be the guy to adjust. If you are there and you feel like real secure in your position, you might totally abuse that. And I just can't afford to have a problem when I'm hanging on to my dignity as a man trying to make my money. You know what I mean? So that's what we did. And it's strange. They're not on the books as like second-class citizens, and we gave black men the vote before women, did we not? Hey, I'm not here to deliver facts. I'm trying to offer some perspective. And when now black folks have climbed their way out of this second-class status that really was imposed from the imagination of the population, of the populace, the imagination of the populace. Our culture, it's a culture problem, it's a people problem. It wasn't a systemic thing, except the systemic issues helped it in our imaginations. You know, we don't hear enough of it. And this is our chance. We have smartphones and stuff. We haven't lost our freedom. We haven't lost it for each other yet because we enjoy being over a second class or a third class or a fourth class of citizens. So I wanted to talk about how the white people acted. And I want to warn you that there's a lot of black folks moving over to the conservatism camp. We've just established a nice, good decade of black people playing victim, and people in general, women playing victim. We're taking away the right to be a victim. And when you do that, people are a danger to each other because they're not allowed to complain. As a man, I think that they talk about some kind of war on masculinity or something. Part of the problem is that as a man, you are not allowed to have complaint. You can't demonstrate any weakness. And truly, people like a stronger target. Like, that's who we reject high performers in the workplace. Do you know that? If we get rid of the high performer, then clearly can we acknowledge the reality that it's nothing but popularity contests that decide way too often if you're welcome in the environment? And then can we recognize that the person who attends to popularity contests instead of mission accomplishment is going to get rid of the high performer? They're going to pollute the environment around the high performer specifically because the high performer, first, not being politically interested, is the better strategist, probably develops good systems and routines, strives for efficiency. I've learned to not work too hard so I can blend in and not make people feel like I'm competing or raising their standard. You know what I mean? Terrible environment. I like to see how good I can do, feels more satisfying. But not being politically interested, they're better performers because of that, but also because they're not politically interested. They're vulnerable to the popularity contest. So they're threatening to someone a bad apple. But they're also vulnerable because they're not politically interested. Because they're not politically interested, they're a higher performer and they're threatening. But because they're not politically interested, they're not engaged in the political ongoings, the infighting, and they're vulnerable. So once some bad apple gives plausibility for others to demote that person socially in the environment, it appeals to anybody who's hanging on to their spot. Whiteys. Oh, I wanted to say about black folks. You hear black folks talking that Nazi talk, just like we set an unfair standard. 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week. I work 60. You know, you don't got a job. Like, people enjoy that there are, you can't afford that? It's only $10. It's like, I can't really afford another $10 right now. I had to pay this. It's like, it's like you're defending that the hurdles should be higher, but because someone underneath you can't make it over. But the hurdles keep getting higher until you can't make it over. So the white folks, we adopted sort of a Nazi ideology here, that an authoritarian, you're broke, get to work, you're broke, you ain't shit. It's like, where did you get your money from? You needed a person to give it to you. You need association with people. And that popularity contests end up ruling the day is absolute proof of that. But you don't need to be then even capable. So how are you going to slight the person as though they're not capable for the work when you know it's a popularity contest? So anyway, I don't know. We've set an unreal standard that around the world, it just helps when you hear other people say it. You know, I heard like a British guy talking about the Americans and how much time they spend at work. And it's like, I felt that way too. You know, it's like they're getting as much work out of us as we can. And there's quite a campaign going on now after all that decade of that example of people playing victim. So now there's no viable victim card to play. The conservatives now seem to rule the media. All these people are going over to Camp Conservative just because of how stupid liberals have been for the last 10 years. And in doing that, black people are finally out of the depths of this second class status and embracing the same supremacist idea and enjoying the idea of the broke ass motherfucker under them. It appeals to our wish that we're dominant workers. German people are very hardworking. It just totally speaks to our ego. If you can create an entire impoverished class and then let us know that you're better people because you work harder, that appealed to people. And even though none of them will call themselves racist, because it's not that they hate they think, I don't hate black people, or whatever it is. It can be different stereotypes. Gen Z is apparently having a hard time in the workplace. They could be underskilled, but even if they're not, the guy who is skilled, that's the guy who we're gonna put all those stereotypes on. So, I mean, even though we have this idea of prejudice as something that we apply to large groups of people, we use what is already applied to large groups of people against specific people. So I'm a veteran. That's how I learned it, because people, they say they like the veterans, right? The disrespect that I faced for that, people saying that I'm crazy from war, people trying to jump out and scare me at one point, like, and laugh and say that it's like I'm a human still. You might startle me, but guess what? What was fucked up is that it was because I seemed unshakable. I did always see them coming. Like, I'm so much more aware of my surroundings than I think a lot of people. And it's a good thing. It's a positive thing. It's what they call PTSD. But anyhow, what was the other veteran stereotype? I've heard a lot of those. There was this guy who was retired, and he had a back issue, like it's documented with the VA, and he wanted to get off of like the floor crew or something, the stock crew. Like he wanted to get into management, which, by the way, your best managers are like former Marines and veterans, because they actually value freedom. People here don't value freedom. If you really value freedom, you value it for the other person too, because you know it can be lost. We haven't seen a war here on this soil, and I hope it stays that way. But this veteran, he had back issues and plenty leadership experience. Trust me. I mean, the hiring manager or whoever was able to put him in this position was making fun of him, saying he kind of did an impression of how he said that, oh, veterans are too stiff and uptight and can't go with the flow. Oh, and another one that I've heard for veterans is that they can't think for themselves. They need to have orders and stuff. I mean, they've had to go through so much more thinking. They've had to stay flexible. Is that plasticity? They've had to step into different environments and many different jobs. I did jobs in the Marines that I didn't expect to do. But those stereotypes for an underdeveloped civilian population, and I'm sorry to say that, but I think that that's the hope, and I think that's maybe actually, is it more apparent in Gen Z? I don't want to typify them. And is it Alpha after them? See, Alpha might be the correction to these pansies in Gen Z or something. I don't get wrapped up in that. You know, I hear people blaming the boomers, and there's validity to that. I'm a millennial technically, and there's validity to the idea that our social media, we have stayed like high school kids, the way people act. I mean, if you're not out drinking and fucking, then you're like less cool or popular. It really got like that, and social media definitely had something to do with that. I mean, you're out there to get each other into trouble and keep each other down, truly. So you shouldn't enjoy the idea of a second class or even a third class citizen, and there's nothing on the books that establishes it in such terms, but we do it. And if you allow people like Jordan Peterson to represent single men, like on the fringe and all this, and speak for them, it's really the same as blackface. And if you look at it, you're encouraged to mob each other. So don't listen to these intellectual types. Your view from the ground should say like, damn, we're really pretty cooperative and cool, like situation after situation. The problem is when we're locked in with each other and living up to personas in front of each other, which when you're at work that much, and then you all have to. So I don't want to go off on the wrong tangent. I have a lot of the same things that I seem to repeat, but you shouldn't defend that the water's rising because you can't swim either. You need someone to give you money. You want it to be that you're this skilled, responsible person, but I can work at the packaging company because it's available in America, that we package shit and have factories and shit. I can work there for $10 an hour if I'm working 40 hours a week. I've got enough money to waste. I certainly do. I got everything paid and can waste unless I've accumulated debt, which would be my own dumbass fault. But I mean, someone can make it with that wage. I make much less, but I'm very fortunate for the situation I'm in now. But that's all available to me because we're a privileged country, and we can definitely defend each other getting priced out of the ability to drive or have a phone. And these are things that you're more and more required. You're very limited without that level of capability. And that's the level of capability that somewhat in the machine age, after the Industrial Revolution, that this country's already standing on. When we had a cotton gin. No one cared about releasing the slaves until we got all the free labor out of them that we could. And then we all became wage slaves. But we liked it. We German whites liked it because there's a whole class of people beneath us and they don't do it right. I tell you, I come from a mom and dad who did it the right way, if there's a such thing. And they really pinched their pennies. I can't believe how industrious they were at home. They were always gutting a room. You know, I'm from, I think, the most privileged state. And there is a lot of factory work, and I think that's why it's the most privileged state. What's interesting is that the privileged person can defend that it's their doing, even though they really need their association with the society to have anything that they got. Like I said, an Iraqi has no factory to go to. They don't have a Walmart to go buy milk and cereal and shit like that. They got a woman who's covered completely head to toe in a region where the wind itself is hot, and she follows a goat around for hours, hitting it with a stick to get it exercised or something. And then the men do stand around exchanging information, I suppose, is how it would look to me, because I mean, we were really establishing, if we would have set up the United States of Iraq, they'd have Walmart and McDonald's and factories and stuff. It's just, why would you fly all the products, all the material goods out to the desert, all the materials, all the building materials and stuff? Why would you do it out there, you know? You'd have to ship it in to... But they apparently have resources, right? Some important resources. We didn't, I don't know, it's weird. We weren't supposed to be in that war, and then we found ourselves like waist deep, and then we could have finalized it and set them up, made them a good country with good police and a good military that can take care of itself and also serve as an ally in a region that hates us. We could have done it, but as soon as we actually did, and then decided to let it just... Afghanistan was especially horrible. That outraged a lot of people. But you shouldn't defend that there's someone stuck beneath you unless you want the water to keep rising, so you find that you or your children get priced out of having a phone or a car. And then once you don't have a phone or a car, how you gonna get money, right? You know the experience. So black folks, I didn't hear this until like 2 years ago, but black men were incentivized to pretty much leave the home to qualify their wife and children for benefits, for welfare benefits. It became the responsible thing to do to leave the family. I didn't hear that early enough. And that's the importance of hearing from everybody in this country. There's 333.3 million people as of the 2022 census in this country. It's a lot of different situations that our leaders don't see, that the intellectuals don't see. So be careful that, see, the last outgroup, it'll just be poor people. So now, Camp Conservative, everybody come on over, you know? We're about that money, we're about working hard and all that. Yeah, well, that's what my people were saying when they were punching down on second-class citizens. And if you allow for us to become, well, it could be something like a caste system, but it like serious levels to it, like Rome, like the eagle's this high up, but there are these undesirables who you own, and you can even smack them around if they're not working hard enough. It can get real bad, and if you allow it to divide into a two-tier society, one will insist that the other side is the problem and insist that they need to be exterminated. And guess which class needs to be exterminated most of the time? The have-nots. Not the haves, but the have-nots. That's where we're going. The have-nots, they don't have anything. They don't fucking... They don't got grind like me. Man, they don't have social and financial advantage in the first place. Privilege, I'll tell you what privilege is. I'll tell you what privilege is. As one who has had it and has not. But you know, in America, even our privilege, even our poor people remain kind of privileged. You know, they need to be enabled. These homeless shelters getting bigger. Jails, prisons getting bigger. Mental health crisis getting worse, and probably those hospitals getting bigger. And they only get bigger. And we're glad to push each other into those pits. So there's a lot of things that steal my attention when I'm trying to describe this, but second-class citizens, we make that in our mind. They get spoken for with stereotypes. and the stereotypes arm you for to hit each other over the head with. And you could say, I'm not prejudiced. I have nothing against black people, or I have nothing against Mexicans, or I have nothing against Gen Z or the elderly. I have nothing against veterans. Yeah, you can say that, but then when you have one that you don't like, you don't recognize it's discrimination, but you're just using that toxic shit that's in our social climate. You're just gathering that and sticking it on that person. So I don't want work to be a popularity contest. If you can't handle me in your work environment, then you better step up your game. Except God has blessed me to seemingly to safely deliver me to a different situation here. And after all I've seen, I just hope that I can somehow explain this, because, history repeats. I don't think it necessarily repeats by accident, and I know that these rulers want to blame us for it, but they've used this in-group, out-group approach forever. It's always been in-groups and out-groups. And my people liked that situation, and the black people, I say my people, but whiteys in, I don't know, from 1870 onward or something, my people, I don't even want to call them my people, but, we're not mostly white, but the white category is the biggest in our 333.3 million. It's the biggest category. It's not a majority because it's not more than 51%, but it's like the largest minority is white. The largest category of white within that is descended of Germany specifically. I think there's a very sneaky Nazi rebirth happening, and that there's something like, I think it's in a lot of the language of the conservative media, which is disappointing to me because I am pretty much a lifetime conservative. And I think it's pretty subtle, but that they're appealing to the idea that you're going to go ahead and say, why don't you work more like me? You're made to do a little more than work, so we're working the most we can for others. This is our opportunity to work for ourselves, possibly, and we should not sabotage each other in such an effort. We could possibly maybe get some of the country back. We used to own like all of it. Before 1913, there was no income tax. 1913, I believe. Since then, our dollar is worth like 2 or 3 cents. If you go back in time, if you had a 1913 dollar, how would this work? If I went back in time with my dollar today, oh yeah, it'd be worth more. I'd be buying more shit. I'd be getting more out of my dollar, right? Now I've got 2 or 3 cents left of it since that income tax, property tax, and taxes on businesses. If you gave back like half of all that to the people, some of it might end up in bullshit industries like fast food and shit, because that's what privileged people do. See, you want to typify the poor person as wasting their money? See, I gotta make my coffee at home. I can't buy $7 or $8 coffee, and then you're gonna call me a broke ass motherfucker, like, cause I'm wasteful. I'm not wasting like that. A privileged person at work, get real about it. You waste way more money. Saving money doesn't get you anywhere. It'll take you forever to save very little. Saving doesn't work. Making money makes a big difference. People get comfortable enough to pay for garbage. I know someone who they were paying for what they considered a healthy meal, a microwavable meal, which doesn't look that healthy, and it's a plastic container. I just think not healthy. He's paying $9 per meal for these things. And know what a poor person does? They brown a bunch of beef and use it one way or another and take the leftovers to work. They cook at home. There are people who want to call them, it appeals to the underdeveloped people that someone who's broke is broke because they ain't shit. You might not know how to fix your own car. I know a lady was paying for calipers for $800 or something, thinking she only needed a brake change. If you needed calipers, you were going to know it. That lady was getting ripped off and thought, oh, okay, I didn't know I needed all that. Me, broke ass motherfucker, I've had to change my own motor mount, which, that was a high risk operation for me. I don't really have a great jack, and if I messed up, I could have dropped my motor out of my car and my engine. I could have fucked up, but I didn't. I was able to do it, change my spark plugs. People make fun of me like I don't know how to do shit, and my car sucks because I'm not self-sufficient. I'm self-sufficient because my car sucks. You get it? It's unreal, even. Just, not only do I have to deal with the extra challenge, which is nothing for me, which would be a big deal for one of these underdeveloped people, don't know how to cook, because they're able to just, they're out of time, they're working 40, 50, 60 hours, they don't want to do dishes, don't want to cook. Fuck it, pick up a pizza, order a pizza, pay $20 fucking for a pizza. And that's wasteful. You want to make me be wasteful. You want to make me be not self-sufficient. It's a little backwards. I mean, you saw all the creativity we got out of black people starting as second-class citizens. They had to make do. A lot of innovation. But I'm not looking to create some class of undesirables that become some leech on the system because that's what we get told, and now they need to go or something. And you want to take serious the idea of someone being priced out of participation, which is happening, and don't identify your ability in your popularity or your belonging. I've seen, there's I know women at this place that I worked, they're allowed to have fucking migraines every week. Shit like that. I know that there are women health issues and stuff that can be an actual hindrance. We have to have understanding for people being human, but I'm just saying, I'm not allowed to have a fucking migraine. I would never fucking say that shit. If I had it, I'd be hiding it so no one knows. I would never be allowed to say that. Oh, I have a migraine. But don't enjoy too much the idea that you're up here just because someone gave you money. And you might work hard for it, but you still needed someone to give it to you. Yeah.